Well, I've always thought that it was very important. I started teaching in 1962, so that was a pretty long time ago. And I always thought it was important to have a community of learners in your room where nobody is making fun of anybody else. I don't care if it's kindergarten or it's high school or college, where I ended up teaching at Rutgers University. But in the early years, I was an elementary school teacher. And when I saw things like children making fun of each other, I realized that if this is allowed to continue in your room, there's going to be children who won't learn anything. They're going to be worried if they're going to be made fun of next. And the bullies are allowed to continue if you just say, stop that, stop that. So then I began having something which is now called class meetings. You just sit down, and I remember I had one child who was making fun of another child all the time, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I decided I would have a meeting. And this was third grade, and this big kid, Joseph, is being made fun of by a little skinny kid in the third grade called Anthony. And I said, class, I have a problem here. And I described the problem, that no matter what I say, Anthony can't stop making fun of Joseph. And so what should we do about this? I need help because I can't solve it. So class, what do you think? And they got so sorry for Anthony and so sorry for Joseph. They said, yeah, Anthony, how would you like me to make fun of you all the time? And they sort of stood up for Joseph, who was the... And so at the end of this conversation, as it goes on, Anthony jumps up and says, well, I told Joseph I wouldn't make fun of him anymore, which he never did. But that's okay. I said, oh, very good. Thank you. We're glad to hear that, because people can change. And what I also came to realize is by having a kind of classroom, a democratic classroom, a classroom where whenever possible the group talks about solving a problem that's going on in the room, that what you're really doing is showing them what democracy is all about, and that it's citizen participation in solving problems and trying to achieve some goals. It's not just always every person for themselves, but we need to cooperate and learn from each other and help each other to have a kind of a decent classroom, town, state, country, and world. That they're learning democracy, they're learning nonviolent solutions to difficult problems. And they're learning that it's okay to say, I don't know, or I need help, and it's really wonderful to help somebody. And, you know, the whole theme of everything really boils down to respect. Whether you're teaching in a class where they're 5 years old or whether they're 22, there has to be respect. And if there's not respect, then it's going to be difficult to learn enough, to learn in a kind of enjoyable way that's made possible by teachers who really care about how their students are feeling and how their students, and trying to help them become more and more successful at the work, at what they're doing.
We're back talking about those wonderful students, the alternative high school.
Yeah.
And wonderful.
Well, one of the projects that I did was based in a nursing home, which was across the street. Well, actually, it was a big church. And I crossed the street. I said, I wonder what that church is. So I went across the street, and it turns out that no one from the school, this was a building with 3 or 4 schools in it, and maybe 3 schools, and no one in the school was talking to the church, and the church wasn't talking to the school. When I went across the street, I found out that this church had an elementary school attached to it. It had a nursing home attached to it. It gave away free clothes. It had a credit union. This is in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, an area that people think of as kind of like a lot of poverty and so on. And it was just wonderful for me to see how organized these people were in helping their community survive. So what happened was I got some money, a grant of about $900, and bought tape recorders and some other things, and we went across the street and began to interview people in the nursing home. And we interviewed 5 people, and so we had to learn, how do you talk to people in the nursing home? A lot of the students were scared to go in there. They didn't want to see all these old people. They thought, oh God, all those, oh, they're sick and they're in wheelchairs. And then they found these wonderful people who were in the nursing home. They interviewed them. Over weeks, we transcribed what they had written over the tape. They had recorded over the tape recorder. And we put together a book called The Lives of the 5 Residents of the Concord Nursing Home. And the whole process of collaborating on these different 5 people brought the students together because they had to make sure that all the pieces went together, the youth and the working life and the retired section went together. And we found someone who played in the Negro leagues. As a baseball player in the Negro leagues. It was 92. And they began to have a lot more respect for older people. And that is part of the theme of my life as a teacher, which is respect. So we put the book together. We had a big presentation at the nursing home. The sad thing that happened was that we sent out press releases and nobody came. Not one single newspaper came. And I said to them, you know, this is really sad. If you killed 5 people, they would have been here. You did this wonderful thing of interviewing people who are unsung heroes, and nobody came. So I called up the United Federation of Teachers, and they agreed to come, and we made the centerfold of our union paper, which I have to this day. And so this is an example of how I feel that teachers should be going outside of the 4 walls of their classroom, making a connection with the community. Now I'm involved in the environmental movement. I just recently retired as a professor from Rutgers University, where I help prepare students to be teachers.
Thanks.
And now I am going to work as hard as I can to help turn our country from polluting energy of fossil fuels, oil, coal, and gas, to clean energy with solar, wind, geothermal, and tidal, so that the students that I've taught and that other teachers will be teaching will have a world to live in. Well, I have made phone calls and helped organize meetings on the need for clean energy, but I've also gotten arrested twice. Once, blocking the doors of the Congress with 68 people. Some people were blocking doors of Congress, some people were blocking intersections, to call attention to the fact that Congress has to take a stand for clean energy and not be in the pockets of the coal and the gas and the oil industry. So I was arrested. I was charged with unlawful assembly, and after being processed, we were all taken away in handcuffs and processed through the District of Columbia. We were charged with unlawful assembly. Soon after, I was part of a sit-in at Senator Mitch McConnell's office. He is the Senate Minority Leader in Washington, D.C. And after a fairly good energy bill for clean energy was passed by the House of Representatives, he told all of the Republicans in the Senate to vote against it. So I was part of a sit-in for 12 hours, no, not 12, it's from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 at night, saying that we want to talk to him. But he wouldn't do that. So we stayed all day and we got arrested. 2 of us got, actually turned out to be my husband and myself, out of 20, got arrested, processed through the system, and this time we were charged with unlawful entry, which was interesting because the door was open when we went there. But later, and our punishment is 6 months probation, unsupervised. And that's what happened to us. My husband, because he's been arrested more for clean energy efforts, has to pay a $100 fine. I think that it's very important for teachers who feel like they want a better world to actually not just teach their children, do the best they can, that's wonderful, but also to step out into the world and make an active difference. You don't have to get arrested, but you could join some organization that's trying to see, for example, that we don't get into another war with Iran, for example.